No, I think what the consultants said was that it was difficult for them to drill down and really identify the full cost, uh, all the costs around the airport, and their
Because of a
best
lack of transparency.
their best estimate was £3.7 million, and they were critical, I think, of the way the financial transparency was working, the process was working, and the fact that to some extent it was incorporated within the Department of Infrastructure's overall accounts, and they didn't get clear line of sight on some of the cost centres that were functioning within the airport. So I think based on that, based on other evidence that the consultants brought to light in terms of the overall performance of the airport, there was a clear case for change. Many of us have felt for a long time that some of these functions where there is a more commercial element to government's service should be structured in a different way, and the ultimate recommendation is that we pursue this idea of an arm's length organisation. And I must be absolutely crystal clear, this is not in any way privatisation. The airport is a strategic asset for government, and this is not about privatisation. This is about managing and running the airport, we think, in a more transparent and accountable manner, so that we get much more oversight in terms of performance levels and the targets and the indicators, the key performance indicators that people are working to.
If we break down a little bit about the reasons behind that, then, I mean, one of the first things to sort of come up from this is that a lot of the information is centralised. So between the airport and harbours, it's a little bit unclear. Is there already work going on to sort of decentralise it or make sure the information is more clearly separated?
So, I mean, we're always looking to improve the financial reporting process that's in place, and not only is Treasury itself working on that, we have our own internal audit team, and of course all our accounts are externally audited as well for accuracy. So there's always areas where improvements can be made. Yes, we're always looking at taking out and identifying areas where we can get more oversight and understanding of where government is spending its money. And of course, in this particular case, I think there is a clear evidence that moving to a more or a different structure around the airport will enable us to get much more oversight, transparency, but I think also improve the service levels that people experience down the airport, and ensure and also give executive management more flexibility to make improvements and to perhaps drive a better performance levels across the whole all the aspects of the airport's delivery mechanisms.
We touch on the services there. Of course, what has been heavily sort of criticised for overspending really is people's wages. It's overtime especially, but it also poses, changing that appears to pose the highest political risk. Is that something you would consider looking at, to changing people's salaries, whether that's restructuring contracts down at the airport?
Well, we're going to approach this in a logical and methodical way. First point that needs to be considered is to put together a transition team, and that will comprise many of the interested parties, including Treasury, including the Department of Infrastructure. We'll put together the framework under which the airport would operate. We'll put together the governance structure around that. We need to take that back to Tynwald, but clearly as part of that we need to understand how the staff, what transition would be needed for staff, and also how they would be looked after in the future. I'm very much in favour of supporting a fair wage for people's performance levels, a fair wage.
Do you think it's fair at the moment, or is it too high?
Well, for the efforts that they put in. I'm not close enough to the airport to make that kind of decision. But what I would say is that I think for staff and for management, this new structure actually would give them much more freedom and flexibility to be part of delivering a much better service at the airport. And I think they should look forward to this change rather than look at it as a negative.
We're here, obviously, the first thing to happen in these cases is put in place, as you say, that transition team. That transition process, albeit it hasn't started yet, how long, what's the timeline for that?
Well, we would like to be back by April 2020 to Tynwald with our plans, deliver those plans to Tynwald for approval, and then get on and put it into practice. So, we do have a clear set of timescales in front of us, and during that period we'll work hard to make sure that we have covered as much detail as possible in terms of, as I said, the framework and the governance structure that will be needed for a new executive team, or the executive team, to be able to deliver on our expectations.
And where are we regarding legal aid and replacing it with a public defender unit?
Well, that's with the Attorney General at the moment. We've taken what started off as a identification of the possibility of introducing a public defender unit, and bring with it some additional cost savings and better control over the legal aid expenditure. But that has moved not just from criminal legal aid now out into civil legal aid as well. So there's quite a big review going on with the Attorney General. That sits with the Attorney General. It's not being managed by Treasury. And we expect that we'll hear back from the Attorney General in the next parliamentary year as to his findings and what his recommendations are in terms of improving the process around legal aid.